more extreme, longer dry spells, and then also, but yeah, also we're getting really, really strong storms as well. So with droughts, people are literally losing their water.
Welcome to the Novara One Planet podcast, hosted by me, Veronica Lysett,
and me, Nigel Jollins.
where you'll hear people in coastal communities tell their inspiring and sometimes challenging stories of how they deal with climate change. Today we're talking with Tom Lusink, who lives and works on the island of Raasay in the Inner Hebrides in northwest Scotland. Tom has spent the last few years on Raasay working to implement locally led initiatives to both adapt and mitigate the impacts of climate change in the community. He shares his top tips on how to make a difference and the importance of taking action.
We're talking to Tom Lusink from Raasay Island in northwest Scotland. Novara was there in June 2023, if I'm not mistaken. It was a couple of years ago now. We had an amazing time meeting Tom and his colleague Rosie and the community members there and learning about the Carbon Neutral Islands initiatives. Tom, great to see you.
Yes, lovely to speak to you. And yeah, I remember it. It was, I believe, quite a grey day in character, and he's arrived on our newly opened pontoon. And I think we visited the old garden. Yeah.
We did. And then I remember we had a few days there, and then as we were leaving, we got a jellyfish stuck in our intake and the engine wouldn't go. So I had to spend like a couple of hours pulling the jellyfish out, and we had to meet a tidal race.
To get under the bridge to Skye.
Yeah, the jellyfish was sent as a messenger from the people of Raasay who probably wanted to keep you.
So, Tom, for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about Raasay and what's special about it. The island off the island off the island is the phrase that I remember. So maybe you want to explain that.
The Isle of Raasay is 55 degrees north, if you want to use latitude. It's in the northwest of Scotland, located in the Inner Hebrides, so just off the mainland and sort of between the mainland and the Outer Hebrides. To get here, for reference, you would go for the Isle of Skye. So Isle of Skye is a very well-known island. For most people in Raasay, I think they view the Skye as an extension of the mainland. And we are about a mile off Skye, and you get a little ferry, a 25-minute ferry to get here. That's where the island is. It's quite a rugged, wild-looking place, and it's in one of the least densely populated bits of Europe. Uh, and, and yeah, there's about 200 people living here, but we all live right on top of each other. Most people live in the bottom corner of the island, and I think maybe what makes the place special is that on the west coast of Scotland, the population is falling, um, where Rathay's population is growing. So when I first moved here, it was probably around 180-ish mark, and now we're up to about 200 people. So that's not a lot, but they're big percentage increases. So I think we're defying the odds.
What do you think is allowing you to defy the odds?
Think Raasay is caught a wave, which you could probably tie back to all sorts of things. Maybe even, you speak to some people and they talk about the fact that, 20 years ago or so, the island got EU funding that built a pier, which allowed it a regular ferry service, which then allowed Raasay House, this community-owned hotel, to operate with more business. And then a distillery was attracted to the island. That distillery has attracted people, and people have been able to make livelihoods. Uh, and all that has then become a critical mass for attracting, I think, other projects, people, whether it's people like myself. I was originally attracted through the distillery. I've managed to make a career jump on the island because there's now been other projects that you can even work on. And I think the community then has stepped up to address the needs that have then come to surface from this growth, essentially. So, that could be in sense of housing. So the community then took it in their own hands, and they built social housing. So there's a pre-existing attitude of getting things done and adapting.
It's one of the themes that I'd say that we've noticed is that people who live in coastal communities, islands in particular, very quickly give up on anybody coming to their rescue and figure out a way to sort it out for themselves because they have to, right?
Yes, and with that, I think comes a whole host of sort of, yeah, pros and cons, but I do very I see that attitude here and, bring it back to our circumstances. Like, our council is 2.5 hours away, and they manage an area which is twice the size of Belgium. And within that, they have cities, and they have islands, and then they have vast tracts of land. And it's also an impossible job. You're then literally sort of at the end of the road. Yeah, if you want something, you have to make it happen. Adapting to that. Yeah.
This podcast is about climate changes and climate resilience in communities. What have you noticed about the changes in climate in Raasay since the time you've been there, if at all?
So really what I would say, what I've noticed with the climate, it is, yeah, more extreme, longer dry spells. And then also, but yeah, also we're getting really, really strong storms as well. Yeah.
Mm.
Like last year, was probably the most that I've seen the ferry off, it was off, every week almost. Yeah.
And tell us the impact of some of those things, the droughts, the ferry being off, the dealing with the impact of those weather
Some more,
extremes.
Well, yeah, obviously you've got people with private water supplies. So with droughts, people are literally losing their water. Um, losing access to fresh drinking water in essence. And, a lot of these are little springs and aquifers, so these dry up. And I know that impacts the distillery. Um, and then, I mean, you also even see it like, well, we just had a very prolonged dry spell. And, Rassey's actually an area where they would class as a rainforest zone. And that's because we have a climate which is warm and wet a lot of the time. Um, and you would notice, well, a key characteristic of this is bright phosphates, which are the plants that grow on plants, essentially ferns and mosses and uh, things like this. And you could see that all of these were drying up on the trees. They were withering because it obviously had been dry for so long. Yeah, and on a community level scale, when we have extreme weather and the ferries off, that's our lifeline for supplies. The shop at the moment is quite small, so there are only limited stocks they can have. And we sometimes get, we'll get interruptions to our electricity supply. And if that's paired with bad weather, it's very hard for repair teams to come over. Now we've got the community hall. It can operate independently. So in a power cut, any solar here, it will provide electricity, essentially a resilience hub.
Let's talk a bit about the community hub because I think this is a really interesting story in terms of community resilience. Tell us how you got to build this community hub. Well, it wasn't a build, right? It was a renovation. But how did you get the community engaged, get the money, and then get everyone agreeing to do all this?
Mm. Yeah, the story of the community hub tells a good story or lesson in what we're really trying to do. So, when we came into post, 2.5, 3 years ago, we got an office in the community hall, and we were just working here.
We meaning,
Which was my colleague Rosie, and when I say we, I mean Team CNI, so Team Carbon Neutral Islands Raasay.
right, a sort of government-funded climate resilience community liaison.
Yeah, something like that, where we're funded by the Scottish government. They have got ambitions to make 6 islands net zero, but trying to do this for a more community-based, bottom-up approach. So we've been given these goals, and then we're given some funding and resources, and they're like, okay, but you could decide how you get there. So our jobs are sort of, to balance this the project with the community needs and the community goals.
So you are the example of locally led community adaptation, aren't you? You're the coalface of here's some funding, figure out how to make it happen.
Right. And the the balance that I see we're trying to do is because ultimately it was initiated from outside or from top down, as in like people not from this place were like, we want to do this thing on this place. So a part of my job is then inverting that and making sure that the rest comes from the bottom, from the community. Like we need to serve the project, but in a way that aligns the community and the project. So, and that's the sort of discovery and the journey that we have been on. And we started out on this, and a big part of this, what that started out is just listening to people, listening, and that was through a whole lot of surveying, and we made a community climate action plan, which had, engagement events. And while all this was going on, we were working at the community hall, which is looking a bit sorry for itself. It's got these leaking doors which are letting in wind and the rain. The heat pump was broken, so it was cold. So this is the situation, the environment that we were working in. So while we're doing all this engagement and the community's telling us all this stuff, it became clear there's some really big things we need to tackle here, but we also need to just deliver something that it delivers results quickly. This is a long-term thing, but like you got to show that we're serious and that we're here to help. So it became quite clear that working on the community hall would be a good first project, essentially. And it's also part of that community heart, the where we're generating these ideas. A lot of what CNI has built from the community and all the input, this all happens from the community hall. It's our one communal gathering place on the island. So we went down this track, and yeah, it took, it was a bit of a rigmarole, and we were still learning what we're doing. But in the end, yes, we secured various bits of funding. We had to fix the doors, so we had to fix the heat pump, and we repaired the heat pump, and then we got this solar and a backup system. Um, what I think the community hall really speaks to, it's a net zero building, but what a lot of what it provides is really in terms of community benefit. Of course, we've now made some emission reductions here, but it's providing for the community space, and they've got free heating. So now those are savings that are passed directly onto the hall and essentially fund it to do things within the community. As we've sort of been on this journey of listening to the community, I think what's become really clear is that you've also got to build foundations in a community, and these are foundations built into of like cooperation, communication, and decision making, like within a community. And those, that's going to happen in the community hall. So, and it's added physical resilience in terms of, like, yes, a building that can run on its own bat, and is financially resilient in an emergency, but also building now, it's a space for building community resilience in terms of what I just mentioned there, of sort of softer skills on a more social and psychological level, and um, basically being a place to create the capacity within the community to. So the community hall, I think that's blossomed yeah, it's offered resilience on at least three fronts there.
Mm.
The ultimate
Yeah.
resilience of
Yeah, it's a wonderful example, isn't it? Because it's an example of mitigation and adaptation and locally led resilience.
Mm.
exactly. And that's it. And I think adaptation, you're going to have projects like this is, yeah, essentially it is an adaptation project. It's also, yeah, reducing carbon, and obviously they're very often interlinked. And same with resilience, resilience projects should also be making the people more resilient, essentially, and adaptable. And of course, not to say that, as long as we become adaptable, resilient enough, then you can deal with anything.
I just wanted to ask, just to follow on from the community hall thing, if you had your time again, and it sounds like it's been a great achievement, I assume there are lessons that you've got from your experience. Like, if you were to talk to another community and say, look, this is what we did, but these are the lessons that I would share with you on how to do it differently next time, what would those be?
We done a lot of listening to the community, and we've done carbon audits, and then we just formulated projects to tackle those. And I think we have very much initially approached the project with a high mindset, like how are we going to become net zero, or how are we going to fulfill this project and achieve the goals. And if I were to do it again, I would spend more time at the start exploring the why. So why would Raasay engage with this project? Why is it worth the island getting involved, and building those foundations? And naturally, that sort of happened. But I think we could have made it more streamlined, and within that, identifying the community needs, which are wider, not just limited to climate change. Especially on small islands, you have to look at everything very holistically, or they're all interconnected. So I think that would be one of my big lessons, and spending that time to build those foundations. And if you have the resource, even getting specialty skills. Like we've recently done a workshop on, it was called Conversations of Consequence. And this would have been a great thing to do 3 years ago. So that's quite a meta thing of what I would do differently. Other things maybe a little more concrete. I think looking back, I would have really mapped what skills we do have and what skills we don't, and then identify which of those skills we're going to try learn ourselves and which of those skills we're going to outsource. And so I think, yeah, being honest with what you can and can't do, and what you would like to do, and what's realistic.
Nice
Yeah.
one.
Starting with the why and listening and doing all this, that's a long process. And if you're just doing that, you know, you're going to have skeptics. You're going to have people that are asking, like, what are you delivering? Like, you're going to have people that are saying that you're just talking. What is it beyond the talk? So, and having that, if you can, coincide alongside with something that is ultra tangible, which is the community hall. It is the most visible place. And so, having those alongside each other, something that is really concrete, and then that and then while that's all happening, that you can be looking to deliver these long-term projects, because the big impact projects are going to be things that don't just spring up in a year. These are going to be multi-year. That is one thing. I don't know, I would love to tell you about our habitat restoration project before I go.
Please.
Oh, yeah,
We'd love to
please.
hear about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because this was just the germ of an idea when we left.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's much more than a gen of an idea now. It started with the broad heading of trying to improve biodiversity and sequestering environments, and speaking to sort of experts in fields. It became quite clear that rhododendron invasive plant species is actually one of the most potentially harmful or detrimental things to our island's biosphere, and can even have unforeseen circumstances in carbon sequestration, because if you've got a healthy forest, it sequesters a lot more carbon than an area which is just taken over this leafy green shrub, which takes up a lot of space but doesn't sequester a lot of carbon. And they can even spread onto peatlands, which are the island's biggest carbon sink, and further degrade them. And they're a bombshell for biodiversity. So we're like, okay, we now know what the problem is, and what are we going to do about it? And so last year we formed funding application, which went into Scottish Government to do a habitat restoration project, which was based on upskilling locals and taking a completely on the ground approach. What that looks like now is we have a team of 4 full-time contractors who have all been trained up in invasive species control. As I speak, they're on the hill, and every minute there'll be less rhododendrons, I believe. And essentially, we created a new employment for these guys, and so these will be funded for at least the next year, but likely we're tying in with the local Forestry Land Scotland to sort of expand what they do. And really the vision, the goal would be that these people will become the Raasay Rangers, who are essentially tasked with looking after the well-being of the island on behalf of the community.
Well, that's so exciting,
Fantastic.
because it's such a forward-looking vision. It's a long-term strategy that you're putting in place.
Yeah, and something like that can deliver really big results.
Mm.
Wonderful.
Brilliant.
Wonderful.
Brilliant. What a great story. Thank you so
Wow.
much. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Wow. And glad, it's so good to hear everything that's happening. What a success story you are.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we're well, I think the project so far is it's being a positive impact, and now really because we've had access to a bit more funding, um, it's really making sure that the islands have that capacity, you know. And there's also been a large scale retrofit that went on, and Rosie's, you know, delivered 3 social houses, and so there's been a lot of money that's come into the island. So it's making sure that we can handle that money.
God, we could carry on talking for hours, but the quick one. I remember Rosie is the born and bred Raasay Islander, right? And you've come in as an adult, as a foreigner somewhat. How has Rosie's departure affected the level of trust in you as someone sort of newbie on the island and your ability to be able to do this climate resilience work?
Rosie brought a lot to the team, and that was one of the things that I really appreciated having her on the team, was a groundedness just from being here that you don't get when you move here. Um, I think I've been here long enough that people trust me already, and I think very much we've went from doing a lot of listening, where now my recent focus has been more on project delivery. And I think to maintain that rootedness in sort of locality is like we work with a steering group, and that steering group's got a lot of representation from people that are born and bred from the island. And so I think staying in touch with that, and it's one of the other balances, because the reality is that the the majority of the population are people like me, which is incomers. So there's only around in the 30 odd out of 200 that are from the island that live here. So, and that in itself can create a conflict, because you have the incomers, or maybe the people that are not from here, who may be seen to be imposing ideas, versus the people who are rooted in the culture of the place. And, you know, so, and it's not, neither is not valid, you know, both are valid. So, um, yeah, I think that is a very strong dynamic that's at play here.
Thank you. That was sort of an aside, but might be useful also.
I think
Yeah.
it's incredibly useful, because that coastal communities, island communities, they wax and they wane, don't they? They, you know,
Yeah.
people come and people go. Sounds as though the starting with the why is really important, and your skills assessment, as well as listen, listen, listen. That's what I heard
Yeah,
substantially.
100%.
And for me, I think the thing that you seem to have hit the nail on the head is delivering something tangible reasonably quickly that's not too far out in the future. You've done it, and you've kind of brought the community along with you and shown that you can actually deliver something with this pretty modest funding that you've had from the government.
Yeah.
Mm. Brilliant. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Tom's top tips.
For community resilience.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Again, our enormous thanks to Tom for his time today. If you wish to learn more about the work Nigel and I are doing, then you can follow us on Instagram at Novara One Planet, on YouTube on Novara One Planet, or email us at novara.one.planet@gmail.com. Thanks again from the Novara team.